Chapter 1. The day of her college reunion. Chloe Sullivan made a point of wearing the low-cut dress. She posed in front of the mirror and asked me, "Ryan, how does it look?" I nodded and ordered her an Uber. 3 hours later, I saw her ex-boyfriend in the doorway of the VIP lounge. Her cheeks were flushed, and she was leaning into him, a soft, willing weight in his arms. Part 1 Ryan, what do you think? Is this dress okay? Chloe's voice floated out from the bedroom, laced with a carefully suppressed excitement. She leaned against the doorframe, showing off a new black dress. It was tight, it was short, and the neckline plunged. I was staring at my monitor, my fingers tapping out useless data on the keyboard. I turned my head, my eyes landing on her. The dress was made of cheap, thin fabric that clung to her body and caught the light with a synthetic sheen. She did a slow turn, the hem of the skirt flaring just enough to reveal another inch of thigh. "Yeah," I said, my gaze already snapping back to the screen. A spreadsheet full of numbers pulsed back at me, an unsolvable knot. "Looks good." A flicker of disappointment crossed her face, but was quickly washed away by the anticipation of her night out. College reunion. I haven't seen these guys in years. She walked over, trailing a cloud of cloying perfume, and leaned over to peer at my screen. "Still working on that stupid proposal. Your boss is a real piece of work. Shot it down 3 times, and he's still making you tweak it." "It's my job," I said flatly, my fingers never pausing. The blue light of the monitor cast my face in a neutral, emotionless glow. "Whatever. You're a lost cause." She straightened up, turning back to the full-length mirror in the living room for one last inspection, tugging the neckline down a fraction of an inch. "I'll get my own ride. Don't want you to have to drive me and waste precious time you could be using to sell your soul to corporate America." "Okay." I pulled out my phone, my thumb swiping open the Uber app. Location, confirmation. The screen read, "Your driver will arrive in 5 minutes." She grabbed a small, silver clutch from the side table and walked to the entryway to put on her shoes. Stilettos. They made a sharp, clicking sound on the hardwood floor. "I'm heading out," she called, her voice bright. "It'll probably be a late one, so don't wait up." The door clicked shut behind her. The apartment was instantly, profoundly quiet, the only sound the steady, monotonous tapping of my keyboard. The numbers and charts on the screen felt like a vast, cold web. An email from my boss sat at the top of my inbox, the subject line a glaring accusation. Proposal V3, still unacceptable. "Ryan, is this really the best you can do?" The thick, sweet scent of her perfume still hung in the air. I got up, walked to the window, and shoved it open. The late autumn evening wind rushed in, cold and sharp, clearing out the smell. The streetlights below were already on, casting a hazy yellow glow. A white Prius pulled up to the curb. Chloe opened the back door and slid in, the hem of her dress riding high on her thighs. The car merged into the flow of traffic, its taillights disappearing around the corner. I stood there for a moment, until the wind made my fingers feel stiff and cold. I sat back down at my desk, the screen's light making my eyes burn. I closed the goddamn email and opened a new, blank Word document. The cursor blinked in the top left corner, a single insistent eye. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but my mind was a sludge of perfume and exhaust fumes. My phone lit up on the desk, a notification from a work group chat about a last-minute meeting tomorrow. I picked it up, my fingertips cold against the glass. As I unlocked it, a name I hadn't thought about in a long time surfaced from the depths of my contacts. Ethan Reed. Chloe's ex. The one she'd dated for 3 years in college. The one she'd broken up with after graduation because of the distance. Would he be at the reunion tonight? The thought was a small, sharp splinter. Not painful, but definitely there. I frowned, pushing it down. A wave of irritation washed over me. I shoved my chair back, walked to the kitchen, and opened the fridge. It was mostly empty, except for a 6-pack of beer. I pulled one out. The aluminum can was ice cold against my palm. I popped the tab, a sharp hiss, and a bit of foam spilled over my fingers. I tilted my head back and took a long swallow. The cold, bitter liquid slid down my throat, but it couldn't wash away the thick, formless frustration tightening in my chest. Back at the desk, the blank page stared at me. The cursor blinked, mocking my emptiness. The image of Chloe in that black dress and the red letters of my boss's email flashed in my mind, one after the other. With a grunt of frustration, I snapped the laptop shut. The room was plunged into darkness. Chapter 2. The Emperor's Suite at Vortex Lounge was a cavern of noise and heat, the air thick enough to swim through. A massive screen blasted the latest pop hit at a deafening volume, while multicolored strobe lights sliced through the hazy atmosphere. The smell was a nauseating cocktail: stale smoke, spilled liquor, perfume, the overly sweet aroma of a fruit platter, and the faint scent of leftover appetizers. Chloe was sunk deep into the plush cushions of a wraparound sofa, her cheeks flushed an unnatural, feverish red. Beer after beer, chased with glasses of cheap red wine, had lit a fire in her belly. The alcohol burned through her, making her limbs feel heavy and her thoughts swim. Around her, people were a blur of motion and noise, drunken howling into microphones and the clinking of glasses, familiar faces made strange by the strobing lights. Chloe, still the hottest girl in our class. You have an age a day. Come on, one more. A classmate, 50 pounds heavier than she remembered, shoved a full pint glass of beer in her hand, his voice booming over the music. Chloe giggled, her body swaying as she took the glass. The cold liquid offered a moment of clarity before she was submerged again by the rising tide of intoxication. She waved a hand dismissively. No more. I really can't. What do you mean? You used to drink us all under the table. Another voice cut in, smooth and close. A hand came to rest on the back of the sofa behind her, a casual gesture that effectively pinned her in. Chloe turned her head, her vision blurring. It took a moment for her eyes to focus on the man who had sat down beside her. Ethan Reed. He hadn't changed much. His features were sharper, more defined, and there was something new in his eyes, something that made her pulse quicken. He wore a well-fitting dark button-down, the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, revealing an expensive-looking watch. Ethan. Her tongue felt thick, her voice slurred with booze. When did you get here? Just got here. Saw you were getting mobbed. Thought I'd run some interference. Ethan smiled, picking up his own glass and lightly tapping it against hers. Told classmates or old times? He put a slight emphasis on the last two words, his eyes roaming her face with an undisguised, heated curiosity. Chloe's heart gave a hard thump. The alcohol and his gaze churned up fragmented memories of their time in college. Secret, intense moments. She didn't say anything, just tilted her head back and drained her glass, the burn of it shooting straight to her head. There she is. Knew you still had it in you. Ethan chuckled, leaning closer. He smelled good, a mix of cologne and faint tobacco that cut through the room's foul air. He picked up a glass tumbler filled with an amber liquid from the table and pressed it into her hand. Try this. Shivas. Straight up, no mixer. It's better that way. Chloe stared at the swirling liquid, hesitating. Her tolerance wasn't what it used to be. But Ethan's gaze was magnetic, and the people around them were starting to cheer her on. Come on, Chloe, don't be scared. Yeah, it's on Ethan's tab. She started to protest, but Ethan's hand covered hers, his palm warm and firm, his grip leaving no room for refusal. Afraid I'll get you drunk? He murmured, his mouth close to her ear. His low voice was a vibration against her skin, his breath hot on her neck. Don't worry. If you get too drunk, I'll take care of you. The words were a dangerous, tempting caress. A rush of heat went to Chloe's head. Egged on by the crowd, she lifted the glass, his hand still covering hers, and took a large gulp. The potent whiskey was a ball of fire rolling down her throat, making her vision swim and draining the strength from her body. She went limp, slumping sideways. Whoa! Ethan exclaimed, his arm shooting out to wrap around her waist, catching her and pulling her against him. Her body was half draped across his lap. The thin fabric of her black dress was no barrier against the searing heat of his arm. Chloe murmured, a vague sound of protest. The room was spinning. She felt like she was floating, completely powerless. She tried to push herself up, but it was a weak, useless gesture, more like nuzzling against him. The arm around her waist simply tightened its grip. Too strong for you? Ethan's voice was a low rumble in her ear. He sounded concerned, but Chloe, her eyes half closed, was just thinking how sharp and nice his jawline looked. Just relax. Rest here for a minute. His voice was hypnotic, The noise of the party seemed to fade into the background as Chloe sank deeper into an alcoholic haze. Ethan's hand began to gently pat her side in a soothing rhythm. The warmth seeped through her dress, and then his large hand began to move, slowly, deliberately, up the curve of her back. His fingertips, separated from her skin by only a thin layer of fabric, traced the dip of her spine. A strange shiver ran through Chloe, a jolt of something that wasn't entirely protest. A soft whimper escaped her lips, a sound that could have been mistaken for surrender. A ghost of a smile touched Ethan's lips. The lights in the room were a chaotic mess, the music a deafening roar. No one was paying attention to them. He lowered his head, his lips almost brushing her hair, but his eyes were fixed on the frosted glass door of the private room. The light from the hallway outside outlined a tall, dark figure, standing perfectly still. It was impossible to know how long he had been there. Ethan's gaze sharpened, locking onto the silhouette. Instead of letting go, he pulled Chloe even tighter, molding her soft body to his. And the hand that had been on her back slid down with a bold, proprietary slowness. In the flickering, forgiving darkness, his cool fingertips found the slit at the side of her black dress, dipping just inside to touch the warm skin of her upper thigh. Chloe's body jerked as if shocked by ice. The sensation seemed to pull her, for a brief second, out of the fog. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting Ethan's knowing, predatory smile. "Ethan, what are you?" She slurred, the words a soft, helpless puff of air. He didn't answer. He just held her tighter, his hand remaining exactly where it was. His gaze, sharp and challenging, shot past her, locking onto the silent, unmoving figure in the doorway. Inside the room, the music thundered. No one noticed the couple pressed together in the corner of the sofa. And no one noticed the silent observer on the other side of the glass, watching it all. Chapter 3. The door to the lounge was thick frosted glass. You could see shapes and the wild strobing of the lights, but no faces. I leaned against the cold wall next to it, the chill seeping through my shirt but doing nothing to cool the fire building in my chest. The door wasn't quite latched, leaving a crack just wide enough. The deafening blast of music and the drunken shouts of men and women poured out of that crack, a tidal wave of sound and stale air that hit me in the face. The smell of smoke and spilled liquor was thick enough to make me gag. My eyes were glued to that sliver of a view. The angle was terrible, but I could just make out the far corner of the massive, curved sofa. The colored lights swept over it again and again, illuminating the scene in demonic flashes. And in those flashes, I saw it all with perfect, horrifying clarity. Chloe, practically melting into Ethan Reed's arms. Her body was limp, her head lolling against his shoulder, her eyes glazed over. One of her hands rested limply on his chest, and his arm was wrapped around her waist like a vice, his chin resting on the top of her head in a gesture of pure possession. That was bad enough, but what came next was what froze the blood in my veins. Ethan's hand, the one on her waist, slid down in one smooth, casual motion. It disappeared under the hem of her short black skirt. Chloe's body flinched, a small electric jolt. I saw her open her eyes and look at him, her lips moving. But she didn't push him away. If anything, she seemed to sag even more heavily against him, a faint, unconscious wriggle, as if settling into a more comfortable position. The flush on her cheeks, which I'd first taken for drunkenness, now looked like something else entirely in the lurid, flashing lights. It looked like the shameful, thrilling heat of arousal. In that instant, the world went silent. The booming music, the howling laughter, the stench of alcohol, it all vanished. The only thing I could hear was the frantic, savage drumming of my own heart against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. Each beat felt like it would shatter bone. A cold, metallic taste flooded my mouth. An eternity passed in a single second. I stood ramrod straight, my back rigid as a steel plate. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, my nails digging so deep into my palms that the sharp sting of pain was the only thing keeping me grounded. There was no roar of anger, no impulse to storm in and tear the place apart. All that white-hot emotion was flash-frozen, solidifying into a block of ice in the pit of my stomach, its weight pulling me down, making my limbs feel cold and heavy. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled my phone from my pocket. The cool metal was a shock against my numb fingers. The screen flared to life, painfully bright. My hand was perfectly steady as I opened the camera. I aimed the lens at the crack in the door, focusing on the two figures tangled together on the sofa. The lighting was a nightmare, the image flickering in and out of focus. But I was patient. I was a predator in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It came a second later. A bright, white strobe light washed over their corner of the room. Ethan's hand, its position unmistakable. Chloe's face, a dazed mixture of shock and surrender. It was all captured with crystal clarity on the cold screen of my phone. Click. The soft, digital shutter sound was swallowed by the chaos. The image on my screen burned like a branding iron. I put the phone away, my thumb swiping across the screen to open my messages. Her name was at the top. Her profile picture, a smiling selfie in the sun. I opened our conversation history. The last message was the Uber confirmation I'd sent her hours ago. My finger hovered over the video file. For a fraction of a second, it trembled. Then I pressed down. Sent. Delivered. After it was done, I slid the phone back into my pocket. I took one last look through the crack in the door. The vibration of her phone seemed to have startled Chloe. She lifted her head, her gaze drifting vaguely toward the door. But she was too drunk to focus. All she would have seen was a tall, indistinct shadow in the hallway. I turned and walked away. My steps were clean, precise, without a moment's hesitation. My shoes made no sound on the thick, patterned carpet of the hallway. The noise, the chaos, everything behind that door, I left it all behind me. The fluorescent lights of the hallway were harsh and white, illuminating my blank, expressionless face. The block of ice in my chest was beginning to crack, releasing a cold so deep and sharp it felt like it could stop my heart. Chapter 4. The city lights blurred into streaks of color outside the car window. The Uber driver was a silent, middle-aged man, his eyes fixed on the road, while a late-night talk radio show filled the car with pointless chatter. I sat in the back, the window cracked open just enough to let the cold autumn wind slice at my face, a welcome, numbing sting. My phone screen was a dim rectangle of light in the darkness, the iMessage conversation with Chloe still open. Beneath the video I'd sent, there was nothing. No reply, no questions, not even the 3 pulsing dots that meant she was typing. I had expected as much. The car stopped in front of our apartment building. I paid the fare and got out. The cold air hit me full in the face. I walked quickly through the lobby, the motion sensor lights flickering on and then off behind me. I unlocked the door to our apartment. The familiar scent of Chloe's perfume, mingled with the scent of home, washed over me. Hours ago, she had been standing right here, asking for my approval. Now, the smell just made me want to vomit. Click. The overhead light in the living room flooded the space with a harsh, sterile glare, illuminating every trace of her existence. Her jacket slung over the back of the sofa. Her half-finished glass of iced tea on the coffee table. The slippers she'd kicked off by the door. I went straight to the bedroom. I opened the closet. Her clothes, a riot of color, took up most of the space. I pulled open the bottom drawer of the dresser, revealing neat stacks of her underwear and socks. Without hesitating, I hooked my fingers under the drawer and yanked it completely out of the dresser. Its contents spilled across the floor in a soft, messy pile. I went back to the living room, found the largest black trash bags we own under the sink, and returned to the bedroom. I knelt and began to mechanically, brutally, sweep everything into a bag. Her clothes, her jewelry from the dish on the dresser, everything. My movements were rough, efficient, fueled by a cold, cleansing rage. A strap from some lacy piece of lingerie snagged on my finger. I ripped it free with a sharp tug, the delicate fabric tearing. I tossed it into the bag like a used tissue. Her water bottle on the nightstand, the fashion magazines on the bookshelf, the grocery list she'd stuck to the fridge with a novelty magnet. Every single thing that held a trace of her was ruthlessly shoved into the bags. The small silver clutch she'd taken with her tonight, which she must have left in my car from the day before, I balled up in my fist and jammed it in last. Soon, 3 huge, bulging trash bags sat by the front door like grotesque tumors. I took out my phone. The chat was still silent. I typed, my fingers cold and precise on a glass screen. We're done. Your shit's in bags by the door. Come get it. Send. Then, I tapped on her name at the top of the screen. My thumb hovered over the red block this caller option for less than a second before I pressed down. A confirmation window popped up. Block contact. Her smiling face vanished from my message history. Then I went to my phone's contacts and deleted her entry. The process was fluid, seamless, like running a disk cleanup on a corrupted drive. The apartment was terrifyingly quiet. The only sound was the soft tick of the clock on the wall. The 3 bags by the door were a silent, ugly testament. I didn't look at them again. I walked into the spare room I used as an office and turned on my laptop. The screen glowed with a cool blue light. On the desktop, the icon for the proposal, the one my boss had eviscerated 3 times, stared back at me like a mark of failure. I opened it. Dozens of pages of dense text and charts. The content that had tormented me for weeks now seemed perfectly clear. The problems that had felt like an impossible tangle of knots just hours ago now lay exposed, their solutions obvious. The rage, the humiliation, the cold, sharp pain, it all coalesced into a strange, almost cruel level of focus. My mind was empty of everything but logic, structure, and data. The sound of the keyboard filled the silent room, a rapid, relentless beat. The light from the monitor reflected in my eyes, which were sharp and focused like a surgeon's blade. Time dissolved. The black sky outside the window slowly faded to a bruised gray. As the first weak rays of dawn touched the windowsill, I typed the final period. The page count at the bottom of the document read 37. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling a long, silent breath. My body was screaming with exhaustion, but my mind was wired, buzzing with a manic energy. My eyes were dry and bloodshot, but my thoughts were as clear and cold as ice water. I picked up my phone and opened my email. I found my boss's address, attached the newly completed document, and typed a subject line. Ryan Miller, project proposal, final version. I hit send. The soft chime of the sent email notification sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet dawn. I put my phone down, walked to the window, and yanked open the blinds. The gray morning light flooded in, making me squint. Down below, the first of the early morning joggers were beginning their rounds. A new day was starting. Behind me, the 3 black bags full of the past looked ugly and out of place in the growing light. The sun was up. The sounds of the waking city drifted in through the open window. I took a cold shower, the icy spray washing away the night's exhaustion and some lingering, sticky feeling of disgust. I put on a clean shirt. In the mirror, the man looking back had dark circles under his eyes, but his gaze was calm and empty. The 3 bags were still by the door, 3 silent accusations. I didn't glance at them as I picked up my briefcase and left, pulling the door shut behind me. The lock clicked into place, sealing it all inside. The office was normal. The familiar sound of keyboards and the smell of coffee and toner filled the air. I had just sat down at my desk when Dave Carter, from the next cubicle over, leaned around the partition. Hey, Ryan. So, how was it? Chloe have a good time at the reunion. Any drama with the ex? He wiggled his eyebrows. I turned on my computer. We broke up, I said. My voice was as flat as if I were commenting on the weather. Dave's grin froze. Broke up? You're kidding, right? Everything was fine yesterday. Did you guys have a fight? No fight. My email client loaded. My boss had read the proposal, but hadn't replied. I opened another file and started working on the day's reports. It just wasn't working out. Dave stared, his mouth half open, but the cold finality in my tone stopped his follow-up questions. He retreated back into his cubicle, muttering, "Damn, that's sudden." The day was a blur of work. My boss never mentioned the proposal. I answered emails, sat in meetings, crunched numbers. My efficiency was off the charts. My mind had never been clearer. On my way to the break room for coffee, I overheard a couple of women from marketing whispering. The words "Chloe really broke up and didn't think Ryan had it in him" floated over to me. I walked past without looking at them, and they immediately fell silent. Late in the afternoon, my phone began to vibrate violently in my pocket. An unknown local number. I stared at the screen for a second, then answered. "Hello, Ryan, it's me." Chloe's voice hit me like a physical blow. It was thick and hoarse, like she'd been crying for hours. "What the hell was that? What was that video? Were you following me? You bastard. Let me explain, it's not what you think. I was drunk, Ryan. I don't remember anything. It was Ethan. Your things are by the door. I interrupted, my voice devoid of any emotion. Go get them. I'm not getting them, she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. Ryan, you can't do this. We've been together for 5 years. 5 years, and you're throwing it all away because of some drunken mistake, because of one video? You won't even let me explain. How can you be so cruel? Ethan took advantage of me. I pushed him away. I swear I did. Chloe. I cut her off again, my tone hardening. I watched the video. I saw your face. I saw what you were doing. I saw enough. I paused, then delivered the final, clean blow. You're his problem now. There was a sharp, strangled gasp on the other end of the line. It was followed by a fresh wave of hysterical sobbing, a torrent of curses and pleas. Ryan, you son of a bitch. You asshole. How could you say that to me? It's not true. Please, just come home. We can talk about this. I swear I'll never see him again, I swear. I pulled the phone away from my ear, holding it at arm's length. Her voice, distorted and pathetic, sounded like a bad radio drama. My finger hovered over the red end call button. I pressed it. The world was quiet again. My reflection stared back at me from the dark screen. Before 3 seconds had passed, the screen lit up again. The same number, flashing insistently. I swiped to answer, then immediately opened the call options and blocked the number. It was like hitting the mute button on the universe. The office lights were a sterile, unforgiving white. I picked up my coffee, which had gone cold, and took a sip. The bitter taste was sharp and clear on my tongue. The black trash bags were gone when I got home from work on the third day. The entryway was empty, except for the faint indentations they'd left in the carpet. My life had shrunk to 2 points, home and the office. I was barely sleeping, but I had more energy than ever, all of it channeled into my work. My boss still hadn't mentioned the proposal, but there were rumors swirling around the office. The big Midwest expansion project had hit a major snag. Headquarters was furious, and the regional director position was still open. That afternoon, we were all called into an emergency meeting. The projector threw a spreadsheet onto the screen, illuminating our boss's stressed-out face. He jabbed a finger at the latest market analysis from our satellite office. Look at this. This is the garbage you're sending me. It's full of holes. You haven't identified a single customer pain point, and your competitor analysis is a joke. HQ has given us a final deadline. If we can't produce a viable plan, this entire department is getting gutted. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. The team responsible for the report was staring at the table, their faces pale. I'd seen the report. It was bad. They had completely misjudged the influence of a local trade association, and it had thrown off their entire strategy. Sir, Mark, a manager from the marketing department, said hesitantly, the association is stonewalling us. Our guys have tried to get a meeting for weeks. They can't even get past the secretary. That's because your guys are incompetent. My boss slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses jump. I need solutions, not excuses. Silence. I stared at the association's logo on the screen. A fragmented piece of information from a late-night research session surfaced in my mind. Something about the association's president. I tapped my fingers on the table. The president's name is Frederick Vance, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the dead silence, it cut through like a gunshot. He has one son, currently finishing a master's in engineering at the Technical University of Munich. In the last 6 months, Mr. Vance has attended 3 domestic seminars on the topic of importing high-end German precision manufacturing technology. Every head in the room swiveled to face me. My boss's angry scowl morphed into a look of stunned surprise. Ryan, how the hell do you know that? I saw an article. I said evenly. Mr. Vance is an engineer by trade. He's obsessed with cutting-edge German tech and wants his son to lead the charge in bringing it to the States. We could change our approach. Instead of a sales pitch, we propose a technical exchange. We use our company's connections to invite a few German experts for a private, high-level symposium. As the head of the association, Vance would be the guest of honor. As for his son, I paused. We frame it as scouting for our future leaders program. We make it about talent and technology, not sales. My boss's eyes lit up. He leaned forward, his previous anger completely gone. Go on. How would it work? The symposium is just the hook. The goal is to build trust. We show Vance that we're serious about the future of his industry, not just our own bottom line, I said, my voice steady. I can draw up a detailed plan, but it would require leveraging our company's assets in Germany. The resources are yours, my boss declared, a grin spreading across his face. Ryan, that's brilliant. You're leading this. Marketing gives him whatever he needs. I want a full proposal framework on my desk in 48 hours. Yes, sir, I said. After the meeting, Mark walked over, his expression a mixture of awe and suspicion. Damn, Ryan, where'd you pull that from? I never pegged you as a guy who played the political game. It's part of the job, I said, a humorless stretch of my lips. The next 48 hours were a blur. I commandeered a small conference room and worked around the clock with a hastily assembled team. We researched, contacted our German office, outlined logistics, and ran cost projections. When I got tired, I splashed cold water on my face. When I got hungry, I ate a cold sandwich from the vending machine. When I placed the finished proposal on my boss's desk, he was looking at his computer, a wide, relieved smile on his face. Excellent. This is excellent, he said, scanning the pages. Clear, clever, and executable. Ryan, if this works, you're getting the credit. He looked up, his eyes lingering on my bloodshot eyes and the stubble on my chin. You look like hell. Go home and get some rest. Thank you, sir. I walked out his office, my body exhausted, but my mind sharp. The project moved forward with astonishing speed. The pressure from headquarters had greased all the wheels. Within a week, the symposium was scheduled. 3 days after the invitations went out, my boss called me into his office, his face flushed with excitement. Ryan, we're in, he said, rubbing his hands together. Vance's personal assistant called. Not only is he attending, he's very interested in learning more about our Future Leaders program. The satellite office is already reporting that the association's attitude has completely changed. This is fantastic. He walked around his desk and clapped me hard on the shoulder. You did it, son. I knew you had it in you. When this is over, we're going to have a serious talk about your future here. As I walked back to my desk, my phone vibrated. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Ryan, I'm at your apartment building. We need to talk. Please. It was Chloe, using a burner number. My thumb hovered over the message, then swiped to delete. Without opening it, I blocked the number. The game had changed. The problem with the Midwest expansion was just the beginning. Frederick Vance's change of heart was the key that unlocked the entire Midwest region. The private tech symposium was a resounding success. Vance was deeply engaged, and by the end of the day, he was proactively suggesting avenues for partnership between his association and our company. The news was received at headquarters like a miracle. My boss was ecstatic, and I, the quiet guy who just used to keep his head down and do the work, was suddenly the man of the hour. Ryan, the big boss wants to see you, Mark said, his voice now laced with a careful respect. I walked into my boss's office. He was standing by the window, looking down at the city below. Ryan, sit, he said, turning around with a broad smile. The Midwest situation is officially resolved. With the association on our side, the rest is just paperwork. HQ is very, very pleased. He paused, his eyes sharp. As you know, the director position for the region has been vacant for some time. My heart rate didn't change. I knew this was coming. There were other candidates, of course. More senior, he continued, tapping his fingers on his desk. But the way you handled this crisis, your vision, your strategy, your execution, it got their attention. That proposal you wrote, he gestured to a printed copy on his desk. It was a masterpiece of corporate strategy. He leaned forward. They've made a decision, an unconventional one. Ryan, you are being appointed interim director of Midwest operations, effective immediately. You'll be relocating to the regional headquarters in Boston to oversee the entire expansion. The official offer letter will be on your desk by the end of the day. Director of Midwest operations. It meant power, a bigger platform, and a salary and stock options package that would change my life. Thank you for the opportunity, sir, I said, my voice steady. I won't let you down. I know you won't, he beamed. You've got killer instincts, Ryan. That's rare. Now go. You've got a big job ahead of you. As I walked down the hallway, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I didn't even look at it. I just reached into my pocket, declined the call, and blocked the number. Back at my desk, the atmosphere had shifted. People were congratulating me. their enthusiasm a mixture of genuine and forced. Dave Carter was practically bouncing. Dude, a director? You're the boss now. Holy crap. Interim, I corrected him, opening my email. My inbox was already filling up with messages from the Boston office. Whatever. Dude, don't forget your old cubicle buddy when you're flying private jets. I didn't reply. The screen was filled with data, reports, and personnel files. A new, more complex battlefield. As I was packing up my desk that evening, my phone rang again. A landline with a local area code I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, am I speaking with Mr. Ryan Miller? A polite, professional female voice asked. This is the front desk at Mercy Hospital. A Ms. Chloe Sullivan has you listed as her emergency contact. She's currently in our ER for observation, and she's quite distraught. We were hoping you might be able to. You have the wrong number, I said, my voice like ice. I have no relationship with that person. I hung up and blocked the hospital's number. Night had fallen. In the back of a taxi, I watched the city lights stream past. For a fleeting moment, an image of Chloe's face, tear-streaked and desperate, flashed in my mind. It was immediately replaced by a complex flowchart of the Midwest region's corporate structure. The past was a pile of trash in a landfill. It was time to build something new. The title of interim director was a key that opened every door. Projects that had been stalled for months were suddenly greenlit. Managers who had ignored my emails a week ago were now calling to touch base. I flew to Boston and dove headfirst into the work. My schedule was a relentless series of meetings, client dinners, and conference calls. The pressure was immense, but the feeling of being in control, of steering the ship, was intoxicating. A week in, I had a critical meeting with a potential local partner, a major player in the Boston tech scene called Vance Innovations. It was a follow-up to the connections made at the symposium and was crucial for securing our foothold in the region. The person they sent to meet with me was their VP of Strategic Partnerships. The door to the conference room opened, and she walked in. She was young, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit, her hair pulled back in a severe, elegant knot. Her face was calm, her expression unreadable, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. Mr. Miller, a pleasure. I'm Claire Vance. She extended a hand. Her voice was cool and clear. Her handshake was firm, brief, and professional. Vance. Frederick Vance's daughter. Of course. Ms. Vance. Thanks for coming, I said. The meeting was a masterclass in corporate negotiation. Claire was brilliant. She was quiet for long stretches, listening intently. But when she spoke, her questions were like surgical strikes, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. It was clear she had done her homework. When it was my turn to present, I laid out our proposal, focusing on mutual benefits and a clear, phased integration plan. The entire time, her gaze never left me or the screen. She was analyzing, calculating, giving nothing away. Your proposal is pragmatic, she said when I finished. I have some questions regarding your cost projections for the localized R&D initiative. She opened a leather-bound notebook and proceeded to pick apart my financial models with terrifying precision. Her questions were tough, designed to test the limits of my preparation. I met each one with calm, data-backed answers, pulling up supplementary files and walking her through my logic. As I spoke, I saw a subtle shift in her expression. The cool, detached analysis in her eyes was replaced by a flicker of something else: respect. The meeting ran for over 2 hours. When it was over, she stood. Your team is clearly competent, Mr. Miller. We will review this internally and have a formal response for you next week. I look forward to it, I said. As we shook hands, her grip lingered for a fraction of a second. Very efficient, she said, the closest thing to a compliment she had offered all day. Back in my temporary office, my assistant poked his head in. Sir, that was Claire Vance. They call her the Ice Queen. She's notorious for tearing people apart in meetings. I think that went well. It was a business meeting, I said, but I couldn't help but think of her sharp, focused eyes. She was a formidable opponent and an even more valuable potential ally. Just then, my phone vibrated. A new number, but I knew who it was. I swiped to decline. A text message immediately followed. Ryan, I'm in the lobby of your building in Boston. I know you're here. We need to talk. Just 5 minutes. If you don't come down, I'm coming up. The words vibrated with a desperate, unhinged energy. I frowned and walked to the window. My office overlooked the building's main entrance. Down below, huddled by a planter, was a familiar figure. It was Chloe. She looked terrible, thin, pale, her hair a mess, pacing frantically and staring up at the building. She looked like a ghost, a pathetic, withered version of the woman I once knew. I watched her, my face a mask of indifference. My phone vibrated again. Her number. This time I answered. "Ryan, you see me, don't you? Come down." Her voice was a sharp, ragged cry. "Chloe," I said, my voice cold and distant. "This is my place of business. If you don't leave, I'm calling security." "Go ahead," she shrieked, her voice rising with a wild, self-destructive fury. "Call them. Let them drag me out. Let all your new, important friends see how you treat the woman you spent 5 years with. You're heartless. You're a monster." "Security," I said into the phone, my voice clear and loud. "This is Ryan Miller, 34th floor. There is a woman causing a disturbance in the main lobby. She's harassing me. Please have her removed." "Ryan, you bastard, you wouldn't dare." I could hear the shock and terror in her voice. I hung up. I turned away from the window, sat down at my desk, and opened the next email in my inbox. A few moments later, a faint commotion drifted up from the lobby, the sound of a woman screaming, quickly muffled and then silenced. My computer screen glowed. The draft of the partnership agreement with Vance Innovations was waiting for my review. The new game had just begun. Chapter 9. A week later, the signed partnership agreement from Vance Innovations was on my desk. Claire's signature was sharp and decisive, just like her. The deal was a major victory, silencing any remaining doubters about my appointment and giving me the political capital I needed to push through my restructuring plan for the region. My life in Boston settled into a relentless rhythm of work. I met with Claire several more times to hammer out the final details of the partnership. Our interactions were always strictly professional, efficient, and to the point. We never talked about anything personal, but a silent, mutual respect had formed between us, an unspoken acknowledgement of each other's competence. One evening, my phone rang. It was Claire. "Mr. Miller, my apologies for the late call. We have a slight issue with the agenda for next week's project launch that I'd like to resolve before morning. It's too complex for an email. Would you be free to meet in half an hour? The Pinnacle restaurant." Her voice was as calm and steady as ever. The Pinnacle was an exclusive rooftop restaurant with a panoramic view of the city. I was surprised by the choice of venue, but I agreed. "I'll be there." When I arrived, Claire was already seated at a table by the window. The city lights of Boston spread out below like a river of diamonds. She had taken off her suit jacket and was wearing a simple silk blouse, the soft light of the restaurant softening the sharp lines of her face. "Sorry to keep you," I said. "You're on time," she replied, gesturing for me to sit. She slid a folder across the table. "The proposed changes are here. It's a matter of sequencing and keynote speakers. We dispatched with the business in under 10 minutes. With the work done, a comfortable silence fell between us. "It's a good view," Claire said, her gaze fixed on the cityscape. "It is," I agreed. "It looks like a giant chessboard, doesn't it?" She mused, turning to look at me, her eyes thoughtful. "And we're all just pieces on the board." I met her gaze. "Winning depends on who's moving the pieces," I said, "and whether they have the nerve to sacrifice a few to win the game." A flicker of something, a smile, maybe, touched her lips and was gone. "You've played your opening moves very well here in Boston, Mr. Miller." "Having Vance Innovations as a partner was the key move, Ms. Vance," I countered. Before she could reply, a commotion from the restaurant's entrance shattered the quiet atmosphere. A woman's voice, raw and hysterical, arguing with the host. "Let me go. I know he's in here. Ryan, he's my boyfriend." The sound, so horribly familiar, was like nails on a chalkboard. Claire and I turned our heads at the same time. It was Chloe. She looked like she had been dragged through hell. Her hair was greasy and unkempt. Her eyes were swollen and red from crying, and her clothes were rumpled and stained. The host and a waiter were trying to block her way, but she was fighting them, her eyes scanning the room with a wild, desperate energy. Then they found me. "Ryan," she screamed, her voice cracking. It was the cry of a drowning woman spotting a piece of driftwood. "Ryan, you have to help me. That bastard Ethan. He took all my money. He's gone. He left me with nothing. I lost my job. I'm getting evicted. Ryan, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Think of our 5 years together. I'll do anything. I'll be good. I swear. Please. She was sobbing, trying to push past the staff to get to our table. Snot and tears streamed down her face. She was a complete spectacle. The other diners were staring, their faces a mixture of shock, pity, and disgust. I sat frozen, my expression a blank mask. My hand, which was holding a glass of water, tightened its grip. Claire's gaze flickered to my face for a second, then back to the hysterical woman at the door. Her expression was unreadable, not shock, not pity, just a cool, detached observation. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her water, the picture of calm in the middle of a storm. Ryan, you can't do this to me. Don't you remember? Chloe's wail broke off into a pathetic sob. I placed my water glass back on the table with a soft click. Then I stood up. Chloe's eyes widened with a desperate, pathetic hope. Ryan, I knew you, but I didn't walk towards her. I walked around the table to Claire's side. She looked up at me, her eyes calm and questioning. I reached down and slid my arm around her waist. Her body went rigid for a split second, a barely perceptible stiffening, and then, just as quickly, she relaxed, leaning into my touch ever so slightly. I could feel the warmth of her body through the thin silk of her blouse. I looked past her, my eyes locking on the pathetic, weeping creature by the door. My voice, when I spoke, was as cold and clear as the winter air. Ma'am, I said, my voice carrying easily across the now silent restaurant. I think you're mistaken. The words hit Chloe like a physical blow. The hope in her face shattered, replaced by a look of utter, soul-crushing despair. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She crumpled, her legs giving way, and was caught by the two waiters. I didn't look at her again. I leaned down, my mouth close to Claire's ear, my voice dropping to an intimate, gentle tone. Claire, this is unpleasant. Shall we go? Claire looked up at me. Her eyes were still calm, but deep within them, I saw a flicker of understanding, a silent acknowledgement. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Yes. I kept my arm around her waist as we turned and walked away. We moved through the restaurant, past the staring faces, our steps steady and synchronized. The maitre d' rushed to open the heavy, ornate doors for us. Outside, the night was dark and cool, the city lights glittering in the distance. As we stepped across the threshold, I glanced at Claire's profile. Her face was serene, beautiful in its composure. Her waist was firm and warm under my hand. Behind us, I could hear the sound of Chloe's final, broken sob, swallowed by the closing of the doors. The heavy doors swung shut, their muffled thud sealing off the chaos inside. One world was left behind. Another lay ahead. End.